Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is going on, y'all? Sorry for the early intro, but this is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast coming back at y'all again for another live episode. My name is Austin, obviously, and I'm live 7 p.m. Mountain Time every single weekday. So go ahead and tune in if you're looking for some extra fantasy football coverage. Always bringing that heat. Got an absolute banger of an episode for y'all today, for sure. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing, all of those things, and check out our Patreon for sure as well for some extra exclusive content. Only get to be seen on our Patreon at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast Patreon page. The link is in the bio if you want to check that out. Everybody who's part of the Patreon, I really appreciate y'all, so thank you for that. Let's get right into it today, guys. Let's waste no time at all. It seems like there's more action going on in my, upstairs of my house right now than the NFL games that are happening at the moment. Not a lot going on in those games. So if you're tuned in, I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in with me. And I want to just get right into it, talking about my top 3 fantasy performers of the week. These are the guys who put up the most points in or on Sunday, Thursday combined as well. Just the people who put up the most points in fantasy this week. And somehow, there's a fly in the studio. Somehow, this guy, Daniel Jones, 0 points at halftime for his entire team. They actually had 0 points in the first 6 quarters of their entire season, and he stormed back like the absolute trooper he is. Daniel Jones, man. There's only one Daniel Jones in the world, I'm sure, and it's this guy. Put up 31.74 fantasy points in week 1 with the 21-point comeback against the Arizona Cardinals. It was absolutely crazy. Saquon obviously also had a big day, but I want to highlight Daniel Jones. Give him his flowers real quick because he definitely deserves it after that performance. He was just throwing strike after strike after strike, play action pass after play action pass. Man's a dog. 31.74 fantasy points for Daniel Jones. Very exciting to see him come back after getting shut out in week 1 by the Cowboys. Next guy we're talking about, Keenan Allen, putting up 31.1 fantasy points in week 2 here. 8 receptions for 111 yards and 2 scores from the 31-year-old wide receiver, showing that he still has a lot of life left in his football career. Definitely surprising to see this from Keenan Allen. I was thinking that he was going to, be a stock down type of guy this year, and he is obviously not doing that. Justin Herbert is firing strikes as well, going absolutely crazy. I think Justin Herbert has the strongest arm besides Josh Allen in the entire league, and Keenan Allen is absolutely his favorite target, route technician, cooking all these DBs on the routes, led to 31.1 fantasy points in week 2, so you absolutely love to see it. And then, guys, the next guy that we have to talk about, this guy's putting the entire league on notice, Puka Nacua. I'm sure you guys know his name by now. He's currently the wide receiver 2 as it pertains to fantasy points in the entire league, and this guy is a rookie. He had 35 targets in his first 2 games. That's got to be some type of record. I didn't look it up, but that absolutely has to be some type of record. He picked up 20 targets in this game against the 49ers. If you were lucky enough to lose your week 1 matchup and be the first on the waiver order to pick up Puka Nacua, you hit the lottery, man. And congratulations to you if that is you. We'll see what happens to his fantasy production as Cooper Kupp makes his return into the lineup, but that's not going to happen for another couple of weeks. So it seems like we have, at least a couple more weeks of Puka Nacua hype. Puka Nacua 15 targets a game. I'm excited to see how he continues. But will he be the number one wide receiver when Cooper Kupp comes back? It is very, very possible. He actually finished with 30.1 fantasy points. Just a light day in the office for Puka Nacua. No big deal to a young rookie from BYU at all. But with my first segment, just wanted to flash those guys, get them their flowers. They were absolutely hooping this past weekend. But with my first real segment here, I want to go with my under-the-radar guys that definitely made an impact, this past week. And I want to start with this young gentleman, Joshua Dobbs, who literally just seconds before the season started got traded, took the number one spot. We thought it was going to be Clayton Tune. Still don't know who that is. But Josh Dobbs came in, took that QB1 spot. And I was wrong about this guy, I guess. Week 1, 0.98 fantasy points. Week 2, 25.2 fantasy points. And I was checking in on his game a whole lot. And he was making a lot of plays. On his feet, in the passing game, he was doing a lot. And, I was excited to see his stat line. He went 21 for 31, 228 yards and a touchdown. Also added 3 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown, and had his touchdown run was absolutely electric. Got through a bunch of tacklers. Nobody could touch him, and just ran it all the way to the end zone. I've seen this guy play before, in previous years, and kind of thought he was a scrub. And, we don't know yet, because obviously the 0.98 fantasy points in week 1 is not promising by any means, but he looked way more explosive and way faster than I remember, and his arm looked pretty solid too, especially not knowing the offense completely yet. Finished with a 99.9 QBR, which is way better than Justin Fields has done in his past 2 weeks. And his defense really sold him on the win. Obviously, he probably could have put up more points, but I think 25.2 fantasy points really does speak for itself. And like I said, he really doesn't know the entire playbook probably that well. Lack of weapons as well, added on to that. Gave up a massive lead, but fantasy-wise, Josh Dobbs may be someone to continue looking at in the quarterback department. Next guy we're going to talk about, he played on Thursday, so obviously didn't play on Sunday, but had himself a day. This guy, DeAndre Swift, Week 1 had one singular touch. Week 2, 31 touches. So, just a slight difference of 30 touches for DeAndre Swift, which is absolutely crazy to see. Finished with 28 carries for 175 yards, the touchdown, and also added in 3 receptions for 6 yards, and only had 3 targets. But we definitely expect that to be going much higher as the season progresses, because he is that receiving back. He's supposed to be like that third down back type guy. And, he got to carry the ball 28 times in the game, which is absolutely insane, after just 1 carry in week 1. I thought Rashad Penny was going to be the guy to play that previously Miles Sanders role, who obviously Miles Sanders playing right now in a very unexciting game against the Saints. But Rashad Penny is possibly turning out to not be that guy at all. And DeAndre Swift might be the workhorse even between the tackles. And I really enjoyed watching him play. He had an absolute day. 175 yards is nothing to scoff at. That is a big, big day. The NFL posted him on their Instagram, their half a day. You absolutely love to see it. We just all knew. I think that's something that we all knew, was that the Eagles' O-line was going to produce some type of running back that was going to make a fantasy impact. PFF currently has them ranked as the number 1 O-line as it pertains to run block. So whoever, I think I could get back there and do something for them. But, I guess DeAndre Swift is going to take it this year. Maybe I'll get my chance next year or something. But his stock is rising very quickly. If you were able to draft DeAndre Swift in your fantasy draft, looks like he came out ADP number 76. So he really just might be this year's steal, and his stock is rising very quickly. Someone that I might be targeting to trade for, possibly. most definitely a good trade target. I'll also be going through my list of trade targets later in the episode, so stay for that. I'll be going through the GOAT whale later, as well as, what's happening in the Monday Night Football games after some more of the game has progressed, because there's really not much happening right now. Next guy I want to touch on, and if you guys have watched my channel at all, watch the podcast in any way, you'll know that this is really the Deebo Samuel channel. I'm super high on Deebo Samuel this year and thinking that he has the potential to just go absolutely nuts this year. Rushing, receiving, he does it all. And I'm loving what I saw from him in week 2. He put up 22.1 fantasy points, 6 receptions for 63 yards, 9 targets in the passing game, and he actually had a chance to go deep, and Brock Purdy overthrew him by just a little bit. Absolutely could have finished with over 100 yards receiving. Also added in 5 carries for 38 yards in the touchdown. The touchdown was technically a pass, but it was like a backwards pass, so it was resulted in the stat sheet as a carry, which I thought was a bit weird. Didn't give Brock Purdy credit for his touchdown. Wonder if he's mad about that. Probably not, because they ended up with the win anyway. But nonetheless, Deebo Samuel's stock is rising exponentially, especially with the Ayuk injury news. Ayuk had the shoulder injury in the middle of the game. He actually ended up still playing in the game and finished with like 4 receptions for 43 yards or something like that. I had him on my fantasy team. He didn't really do nothing, and that resulted in 2 fantasy losses for your boy, for me. You absolutely hate to see it, but what I do love to see is Deebo Samuel's Week 3 matchup against the Giants on Thursday Night Football. That is projected to be happening. The Giants are looking absolutely garbage, shambles, terrible on defense, and they're going to have an explosive offense in the 49ers coming through and probably beating them down. This is also going to be in San Francisco, so I know the crowd's going to be hype. I'm projecting another 40-0 loss for the Giants. Expect Deebo to absolutely keep rolling in Week 3 of fantasy football. Guys, with that, we are going to take a small break, and when we come back, I'm going to be talking about my waiver wire targets, people that I think you should be targeting in Week 3. I know a lot of you guys are just losing game after game. If you're like me this week, and we're gonna find a couple guys that are gonna help our team out, at least people we can put on the bench and stash them, and hope that they pan out for us, because we need some help for sure. But we will be right back. Thank you, guys. Yes, sir. We are back. Coming with the waiver wire targets. Let's get the graphic up as soon as possible here. With the goodness, not the under the radar. We're going with the waiver wire targets. Sorry that took so long. First guy, let's get right into it. Straight up Josh Reynolds. A lot of people don't even know who this is, so I made sure to get the graphic with this helmet off so you guys can see what this guy actually looks like, because I don't think a lot of people know what this guy looks like. To whoever commented, Diggs, by the way, what's up? How we doing? But the waiver wires currently in my 12-team leagues, it's looking a bit thin. on the waiver wire, there's always some value to be had and some players who are going to be, getting production, getting, just a chance to make plays. And that's all we're really looking for is guys who have chances to make plays. And Josh Reynolds is going to be that type of guy. First off, I'm going to give you my top 5 guys on the waiver wire that I'm looking at to target this week. Josh Reynolds being my number 1, literally number 1. This is in order, so keep that in mind. Josh Reynolds currently ranks as wide receiver number 12 in fantasy, which was a bit surprising. I'm sure a lot of y'all didn't know that, but he's quietly been making a lot of noise in that Lions offense. It's very explosive. Dan Campbell is a very risky, likes to take chances type of guy, and apparently he's liking what he sees from Josh Reynolds in practice and throwing him in the game. For the same reason that I like a guy like TJ Hawkinson, I also like a guy like Josh Reynolds. He's got a top 5 receiver on the other side of him, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really do think Amon-Ra has placed himself as a top 5 receiver, someone who has to be worried about, has to be game planned for, and Josh Reynolds, he gets the little scraps on the backside. The scraps on the backside where, not a lot of people are paying attention to him. And he's still the factor in the 2 wide receiver sets, playing a lot of the snaps. Defense pays a lot of attention to Amon-Ra, and that leaves Josh Reynolds with a lot of room to maneuver. Over the past 2 games, 13 targets in those first 2 weeks, which ranks 2nd on the Lions squad. Like I said, very explosive offense, and PFF ranks them 5th in passing efficiency. So definitely something to pay attention to. This is a team that wants to air it out, and this is technically the 2nd target on that Lions squad. So definitely be paying attention to Josh Reynolds, and I think he's worthy of a waiver claim if you can make it for him. 23.6 fantasy points in week 2. After a 12-point fantasy week in week 1. Definitely has etched his spot in the offense. Also caught 2 touchdowns in this week too. Definitely someone I'm going to be picking up for sure. Next guy that we're going to talk about here is Rashid Shaheed. Rashid Shaheed. He is currently playing right now, and I wanted to, during the break, check his current stats. I think he was 3 catches for 18 yards last time I checked. Week 1 went 5 catches for 89 yards. Also added in a couple carries, 2 carries for 11 yards. So had 100 total yards of offense produced by himself. But the dude is definitely a deep threat, knows how to get open, has that 4.3 speed. He's also like their punt returner / kick returner. So you can see that the Saints obviously trust in him to make those, electric plays in the special teams game. He technically is the 3rd wide receiver on his team, but, he's a guy that's on the waiver wire that has a lot of talent. He, like I said, he gets involved in the rushing game too a little bit, jet sweep type of guy, absolute potential to be a home run hitter. So if he's not claimed in your league, I think he's worthy of, a possible claim, given where you are. I definitely expect Derek Carr and the Saints to air it out much more this year. PFF ranks them currently as the worst rushing offense so far this year. And they also just had, during the game, Jamal Williams go out, which only adds more value and more potential to all of their receivers on their offense. Shaheed is currently only rostered in 25% of fantasy leagues, so definitely worth, a roster spot. If your guy has a bye or your guy's injured, I do not hate playing Rashid Shaheed just because of his home run potential. Next couple guys I want to talk about, and I do want to talk about them in a pair. If you guys know me, Texans are my favorite team. These are my boys. And man, CJ Stroud kind of went crazy. Obviously, we lost, and maybe we're trying to tank. Maybe that's like the thing. It's not like we need Caleb Williams, so we'll just get the next best guy to, at a skill position or defense, O-line. We'll take anything we can get at this point. But just because of CJ Stroud's absolutely incredible week, he went 30 for 47, 384 yards, and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. I was very impressed with what I saw. If you've been watching, I actually was talking about CJ Stroud, and just like, I was saying that he's not ready and that his footwork looked bad. All that stuff went out the window against the Colts this last week, and I was actually very, very impressed at everything he was doing. He was really sticking in the pocket, threw it 47 times for 384 yards. Most quarterbacks did not get anywhere near that this week. And I do believe he is also like top 5 in passing yards at the moment for the entire league. That's what a 384-yard performance will get you. Even last week he threw it 44 times. So when I'm talking about these two guys, Robert Woods and Tank Dell, preface it with Noah Brown, who was supposed to be like our wide receiver 1. He's currently on the IR, and he's going to be on there for 3 more weeks. He has to be on there for a minimum of 4, with this week being the first. So because we're going to be down in a lot of games, because our wide receiver number 1 is currently out, I do like these guys, Robert Woods and Tank Dell, to make a bit of a fantasy impact. And it's like you kind of got to, I don't want to say cheat in fantasy a little bit, but there's nothing wrong with going with the bad teams and the teams that are constantly having to throw the ball and taking their receiver and placing them as your wide receiver 2 and just praying that team goes down and that their quarterback has to pass a lot. And with the Texans, that's a pretty good bet, pretty good gamble in my opinion. Last week, or this week technically, last week, I guess it's Monday now, but Tank Dell went 7 receptions for 72 yards and the touchdown on 10 targets. Only 4 targets last week, but Noah Brown was playing last week. And then Robert Woods may even be a better option just because he has solidified himself in the NFL as a household name. This week he went 6 receptions for 74 yards on 9 targets. So definitely good to see. This offense is going to be losing a lot of games. So, it means more throwing, and that means more fantasy points for these two guys. I don't want to say I love playing them, but I don't hate starting them if you really have no other option. If you had a guy get hurt or something like that, pretty okay to play 2 guys getting 9 or 10 targets a game. Next guy I want to talk on, Lions legend, Super Bowl champion, and actually 3rd in passing yards, very, very quietly, Matthew Stafford. This is another team I really do expect to be down a lot during the season, just given their personnel, given that they don't have a lot of home run hitters or like great guys besides a guy like Puka Nacua. Obviously, Kyron Williams has been eating as well, but he hasn't really been eating in regards to yards. He's just getting a lot of that goal line work, so fantasy production is high for him right now. Matt Stafford, week 1, 24 for 38, 334 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Finished with 14.46 fantasy points against Seattle. Week 2 followed it up with another 300-yard performance, 34 for 55, 307 yards, the touchdown and 2 interceptions. But he was also facing probably the most talented defense in the league. I guess it could be debated between them or the Cowboys or maybe even the Jets, but the Jets didn't look too good. So definitely a top 2 defense in the league he was facing and still put up the 300 yards and the touchdown. This guy, he's getting older, obviously. He's been in the league for a very long time, but he's still a gunslinger. Should start seeing better results when Cooper Kupp returns as well. Something to absolutely note, his new toy, Puka Nacua, going crazy, 15 receptions, 147 yards on 20 targets. We haven't seen workload like that from a rookie in a very long time. So very exciting to see. Like I said, Stafford 3rd in passing yards in the entire league. I think he's worthy of a fantasy spot if he's sitting on waivers and you have a guy like, Anthony Richardson or Justin Fields, who's like that more dynamic quarterback. Nothing wrong with putting him as your backup. And if your guy happens to get hurt, I would love to play Matthew Stafford if he's going to just continue throwing for 300-yard games. 100%. 100% of 100%. Next guy I want to talk about, and I feel like this guy's a real sleeper. I don't have the percentage on what he is rostered, but this is Josh Downs, rookie Josh Downs. He plays on the Colts. He is their slot receiver. In his first 2 games, he has had 12 targets, so, an average about 6 targets a game. He hasn't really broken out yet per se, but in the, the routes he's run and the balls that he's caught, definitely seen that potential to have that breakout game soon, and we're definitely hoping for that. He actually took Isaiah McKenzie's spot who I'm sure y'all remember Isaiah McKenzie as a very shifty, good slot receiver who used to play for the Bills. And yeah, took his spot. He's now the starting slot receiver. And this week he played 54 snaps. So absolutely trending in the right direction. Hoping to see more from Josh Downs. Definitely will get some home run hitting potential from him. Explosive in college, man. I remember watching this guy in college a lot. His last season at North Carolina, he had 1,029 yards and 11 touchdowns. So this is absolutely someone you cannot sleep on if he's not on your radar at all. And you have some bums that are sitting at the end of your roster. I would not be afraid to take Josh Downs and get rid of one of your guys. I would compare him to someone like a Jaden Reed type potential. If you saw Jaden Reed at all this week, he's the guy who finished with 2 touchdowns and was doing a lot for his team. And I really think Josh Downs has that type of potential to, break out for the Colts and Anthony Richardson. Get to my page. When we come back, guys, we are going to be talking about my trade targets. The last segment is also going to be a little goat whale update. I know a lot of y'all follow Book It with Trent, and we'll see if he can hit the 100K this year. He definitely has not. He didn't hit it in baseball. He didn't hit it last year in football, so we'll see if he's able to do that. And I'll also take you guys through the people I'm looking to target in a trade this fantasy football season. So we'll be right back. Yeah, you're good.
You should talk about Nick Chubb. Carted off the field with an apparent leg injury.
Wait, really?
Just happened like 5 minutes ago.
Oh, Lord.
That's so crazy. Dude, literally, my coworker had fucking J.K. Dobbins, Deontay Johnson, and someone else that got injured week 1. And then after we made the trade, Ramondre for Waddle got fucking carted off last game.
Yep.
He's like, dude, my team is cursed. Like, everyone on my team gets hurt.
Goodness gracious.
He's like, that'll happen. Then Nick Chubb.
He has
also on
Nick
his
Chubb
team.
too? Oh, my gosh.
Fucked. I texted him, I was like, I'm so sorry for your loss.
That is unfortunate.
My team's cursed. Like, yeah, fuck, I guess so.
That is really
It's actually
unfortunate.
crazy. Like, you drop Waddle this instant.
Yeah.
You got Raheem Mostert too? Like, get him out of here.
Goodness gracious, man.
That's actually wild. Yeah. See what? Yeah. Well, I didn't like see it.
Sheesh, we are back again. Ooh. Back again, and I have some breaking news. Nick Chubb carted off the field with an apparent leg injury. Goodness gracious. You hate to see it. Absolutely hate to see it. We pray the best for Nick Chubb. Hope that he can make a speedy recovery. He's one of the most dominant players in the NFL, so I hope that he can come back even stronger than he was before. Goodness, hate to see that. Let's get straight into it, though. Talking about my trade targets for this week. I think week 2 is a perfect time to make a big trade for your team. Buy a guy who everyone has given up on, or sell a guy for more value than he's worth. This is just a perfect time. People have 2 bad games, and then they're just like, oh, dang, like, I guess this guy is just bad now. Who wants him? And I'm like, me. Let me get him. Please let me get him, because I still believe in him. And the main guy that I'm looking to trade for, I was already talking about it earlier in the episode, if you're listening, is Mr. DeAndre Swift. Went from 1 touch in the first game to 31 touches in week 2. Absolutely crazy. Very fast, versatile receiving back, getting 28 carries, has a ton of upside in the passing game, like I'm mentioning, and he really may be the steal of fantasy this year. If you have the opportunity to trade for a guy like DeAndre Swift, I would absolutely keep that in mind. And we just knew that the Eagles were going to produce a good running back this year behind that offensive line. It was pretty much no question. I was very locked in on Rashad Penny and thought that I was getting a steal when I drafted him in my leagues, have him in both leagues, and it turns out it's probably going to be DeAndre Swift instead. So definitely sad for me, but maybe I can parlay something and get a trade for DeAndre Swift, hopefully. Next guy I want to talk about had a really good week this past week. Very big bruising back, and I'm just excited to talk about him. Sorry, that was one of the dogs. 1 second. We're gonna be right back for 1 second. Lele, what are you doing? Get out of here. Go downstairs. Goodness, can't have anything nice. Right back. Just had to handle some business real quick. Just some little business. But Brian Robinson Jr. is the next guy I'm talking about. Had a really, really big week in week 2. Actually scored 2 touchdowns right at the end. But he's a really big physical runner. Really big. He's like 6'2", 220. He kind of like Derrick Henry size. And obviously the first year that he was playing last year, he had coming off not an injury, getting shot. Literally got shot in the leg twice. And I guess he's made a full recovery now. I'm sure he's very thankful for that. But I'm really liking targeting him as a trade target in that Eric Bieniemy offense. Howell looks just fine. Looks like he can manage, the workload of getting the ball to his receivers. And they really do need someone to set up that play action. I think that guy is going to be Brian Robinson. Antonio Gibson did make it just one electric play during Sunday, but I think that Brian Robinson is really someone to be looking for his stock to rise. After getting shot, I just can't believe that this man is still playing football, and it looks like he's really excelling at the moment. So he'll be someone I'm also looking to target in a trade for sure. Next guy I want to talk about is one DeAndre Hopkins. There's a lot to be said about DeAndre Hopkins. I think everybody's really sleeping on him this year. He's going to be one of my sleepers that I'm talking about throughout the year and constantly. In week 1, he had 13 targets and didn't pan out to a large fantasy day, but usually when you get targeted 13 times, you should be doing a lot more than he did in week 1. And, I like that potential. Think that he can, have the potential to do more in week 3 and on. He also had an ankle injury coming into this week. He was listed as questionable, but he still played. Only picked up 5 targets and also didn't have that too big of a day. But he is someone I'm looking for to target in trades too. Next guy I want to talk about is Mr. Evan Ingram, tight end for the Jaguars. In his first 2 games, he had 13 targets combined, and he is actually currently the tight end number 3 in all of fantasy, only having 9.9 fantasy points and 11.7 fantasy points in week 2. So I just feel like everybody's really, really hurting at tight end at the moment. And, we just don't have a lot of options as it pertains to the tight end position. And you really do need a good tight end to succeed in these fantasy leagues. That is why I invested in a guy like TJ Hawkinson. I actually reached up to get him and was very happy about doing that. He just had a monster day on Thursday, and hoping that all the attention being on Justin Jefferson, it just really opens him up for more touchdowns, more targets, and more fantasy points. Praise God. But like I said, Evan Ingram has a great spot in the Jaguars offense, and I absolutely see him continuing to be a serviceable tight end in every aspect of the word. Everybody needs a tight end. So maybe you can parlay a couple of your bench guys, get a guy like Evan Ingram, and then pick up, some of my waiver wire targets that I had talked about in last segment. Next guy I want to talk about in a trade, and this is an obvious guy that everybody's talking about, and it's Puka Nacua. 35 targets in 2 games is, it's no joke. 35 targets in 2 games. Like a guy like Devontae Adams, a guy like Stephon Diggs, guys who are best in the league, best in their position, don't get 35 targets, so we have to respect this upside. And the fact that Cooper Kupp's not going to be back for a couple weeks, I'm loving Puka Nacua, either to trade him, like if you were able to be lucky enough to grab him. I love trading him and getting some value back, or I love, giving a mid-range, wide receiver 2 or something. Someone is just trying to sell Puka Nacua for the cheap ski, and you could just grab him up. Someone in your league wants him if you have him, and I'm the guy who wants him, so I'm willing to pay a pretty decent price for him. Absolutely a trade target that I'm eyeing for. Next guy that I have on the trade block, trade targets, is Devontae Adams. I feel like Devontae's been, relatively quiet during the season. Had 8 targets and 9 targets in his first 2 games. He was not too much of a threat. He actually did score a touchdown this past week, but still a lot of question marks in this Jimmy Garoppolo-led offense. Is he the number 1 option on the team? Is it a guy like Josh Jacobs? Obviously it's not going to be anyone besides those 2, but we just don't know really where the Raiders stand from an offensive perspective because it feels like everything's so new with Jimmy being the quarterback. I'm not loving what I see personally. I'm really not. Obviously, they had a decent win against the Broncos, where they were able to pull it out right at the end, but it was really only due to a targeting call by Kareem Jackson, which he got another one. So Kareem Jackson's looking like, the dirtiest player in the league award can go right to Kareem Jackson. But I think Devontae Adams is someone who, is worthy of a trade request. I don't hate trading him away and getting some value too, but I think he still has a ton of life left in his career, just like a guy like Keenan Allen does. Those 2 are like pretty comparable. Next guy I want to talk about would be Josh Jacobs himself. He's had 2 subpar weeks to start the season, 9 points in week 1, 10 points in week 2. He got 9 points off getting 21 touches week 1. Next game, he literally had more fantasy points and had 14 touches. So some guys really may be giving up on Josh Jacobs. Super weird. Josh Jacobs went number 2 in one of my fantasy drafts. So, I might be making a call, seeing if I can parlay a guy like Ayuk because I have Ayuk in that league, and grab a guy like Josh Jacobs because I am hurting a bit at running back. I have the Dalvin Cook. And, a lot of people are going to hate on me for this, but Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall on the same squad because I thought one of them was really going to pan out in that Rodgers offense. Boom, Rodgers is gone, and I'm in shambles. I don't know what to do. I'm probably going to have to target a guy like Josh Jacobs and give up one of my decent receivers to get, somebody like that. Maybe a guy